And just like that, back at it one more time. One more bus ride remains, though, if teams aren't able to capture that success here in our second match of the lower bracket. But of course, everybody wants to find themselves in that upper 15 segment of the leaderboard. So we gotta see maybe a little bit of shakeups here. Some of these off-spawn fights. So much of the off-spawn, as Vivid pointed out, seemingly dictating the pacing for the rest of these games.
Yeah, this is what determines everything essentially. Not only is it 8 points worth right here, but of course this is what sets you up to be ahead of the competition if you can end these battles pretty quickly. But all in all, we know what the risk is involved when you take these early game fights. The statistics show more often than not, teams that take these initial battles do have a harder time overall. Let's see it. Cash to play defense here. Cash is a pretty fun creator, fun guy to be around. Let's see how it works out. Not good enough. No clutch here for him today. Furtis and Esho come out on top for the early game engagement here. We get to jump on over to Macwood and Blake. Seemingly getting pressured by Eoxy, not making it easy for them to get comfortable here through the drop spot by any means. And they've caught Eoxy's teammate already here on the drop, so pretty decent start for them. Again, it's still 4 points.
But this is a switch up for Macwood and Blake. They've been opting to go for Snooty pretty much the entire, or at least in the last match, but as far as what we saw from Macwood and Blake in the upper bracket as well. So now that they're here at the Marigold looking to challenge Eoxy and Flo on their loop path, could be a little bit of a struggle, that's for sure, but Eoxy definitely looking slightly better as far as what he's operating with. That is up until you realize that Flo no longer a participant to this lobby unless Eoxy is able to get that reboot card back online. Blake and Macwood getting some nice search tags onto Eoxy as well.
They're pushing. They're coming all the way in. They're here to do it live.
And for good reason.
Tags.
It's really just the points. That's all that Macwood's after. Be hard-pressed to believe that he lets Eoxy get away from here. Macwood and Blake have a lot of ground to make up for, given their earlier than intended departure from the last lobby. Macwood just still bearing down on Eoxy, but Eoxy's not making it easy for him. Just won't be enough at the very end, though.
That's good support, too, from Blake there. To find those tags there, really soften up the target, making it impossible to fill. And now they're going off to the edges. We already know. I was just going to say Pilot was chased all the way up this beach. Likelihood of them crossing another team is still there. Let me jump back in with Tahi here. Little early look at the classy courts, their drop spot, start to piece together what all has been going wrong for this team here. They have a drop spot. They have it uncontested. There's really no excuse for them not to perform better than they are in the mid-game. On over to Shampoo and Decay here, pushing a team on the outer edge. Have to assume they opened up with a couple tags because they definitely have this team hurt right now.
So really strong rotate out of Shampoo as well off the crash pad, but ate a massive shot for it. You can tell him taking a moment, kind of a pause here, waiting for Decay to catch up. And that is going to provide a little bit of a space advantage now. Zuko will manage to escape for the time being, but could be a short-lived victory here. Okay, seems like he's got a really good idea of which direction Zuko even headed, and he's gonna give chase for it for the time being. At least wanting to see if he can maybe apply a little bit more pressure. An elimination would certainly,
oh my gosh,
go a long way here.
Trading.
Those are some tags.
Great tags, and honestly, really great execution of the start of that battle, isolating the teammate out. So they made that very easy for themselves, did everything right. Honestly, pretty textbook at that point. Backing over Chubbs and Bryce, who are very much split up from one another. Surprisingly made a pretty okay appearance there towards the end of the game.
But again, just another one of our NA teams that's definitely been having a tough time with finding their footing in these lobbies. It's now Skater, Walty, the last of their Flowberry Fizz going to be expended here. Grapple Blades, more than good enough to create a little bit of a gap here between them and the duo behind them. Skater and Walty, though, I mean, you get out, sure. You can fall back to the slot barrel even, get some old resources, clearly inside of buildings that they're familiar with, but at the same time, MDF, this is a pretty big investment. It's a pretty big time sink as well, and they've got a decent amount of ground to cover.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those plays that can start to backfire if you stick around for a little too long. We're starting to get to that point here. They've already exhausted the old heals, like you said, that they had at this previous drop spot that they started at. The other team feels the same way. They're luckily also disengaging, so everyone there should unlock a little more tournament life for the time being. Back on over to Ignalai and Creon. We're on a big time rotate here, trying to get to the Grands. Second place right now for this team.
I was just going to say that this is the same team. We saw them in lobby number 1 getting control of that forecast tower over by Dumpenhausen, which is where they've rotated from now to be at the Grand Glacier. But having that forecast online is definitely going to bode pretty advantageous. Have to expect that they're trying to utilize some of that north side elevation. Just going to get a good viewpoint of other teams surrounding the area, see if they can get some additional tags early. That way their mid game can just be all about positional focus.
This is dangerous territory to be in. Team on the heels right now of Oliver OG and Agent Jeff. They don't realize how quickly they're starting to close in here. If they don't get into some kind of protective position or decide where they're going to base up, this could go pretty bad. There it is. They decide to base down here. This Tahi, Havoc. Couple duos, fresh duos rolling in. Now we get to see Shadow Walkers versus Decay and Champo. Teams that have overstayed their welcome here on the west side of the map. The zone's going to end up forcing this party a little bit closer inwards, but I think this is a pretty evenly matched team. We've seen, I guess, a pretty impressive setup before from Decay and Champo, so I know very much well of what Shadow and Walkers are capable of, and I think this would be a good fight if it breaks out in a fair 2v2.
Definitely valid looks here, but zone fights taking place in a couple of fringe places on the edge of the map here. Pilot, Jack, still haven't escaped the shore side just yet. Pilot fighting for his life right now even. Aaron, Chance, barreling down into the boxes, but it's gonna be Aaron finding the first elimination there onto Jack. Chance
again
collects the one onto Pilot, and yeah, it's the exact same duo just mercilessly chasing down Pilot and Jack.
Yeah, Pilot and Jack's chances at top 15 are pretty much nullified if they do not win the next game. After getting taken out that quickly, both of these games back to back, there would have to be a ridiculous point spread for them to have a chance at this point, and that's how quickly, you know, your opportunity to the grand finals can end, essentially. Taking these early game battles in, you know, situations like that are just too much risk involved there. No Chubbs here for Bryce.
No, unfortunately, Chubbs picked off just moments ago based on what that Elim feed was saying, but Bryce, even without Chubbs, it's still early enough in the mid-game that Bryce could definitely opt for a reboot ban opportunity. That's only if he was able to collect Chubbs' card, though. Not sure how feasible that was, but G-Money and Diego down for the count momentarily. G-Money just got to clutch it up right now up against the likes of Siren. G-Money throwing his duo back, just trying to protect him inside of these hard builds. Siren actually going to go for the opportunity to try and get a little bit more shield online, but recognizes can't let this go for free. Siren instead turned on by G-Money. Now it's G-Money who's just charging down Siren. Wanted to just go for the revive initially onto his teammate, but G-Money may have done enough. Now Siren here to play the heckler one more time, understanding the fact that if Diego gets back up and running, it's going to be 2 versus 1 with other teams circulating the area as well. Siren only had seconds to make a decision, and now the opportunity slips away. G-Money and Diego still left as a duo here. And they might be able to even prevent Siren from progressing any further, depending on how Siren actually maneuvers through Reckless Railways.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I respect G-Money's decision to back off there and play very much cautiously, just proving how much he cares about this chance at the grand finals for the FNCS right now. And while that's all happening, I'm like, you know, trying to see the edge of the map, just trying to catch a glimpse potentially if Oliver OG and Asian Jeff, if they're still there as well. Some pretty aggressive fights going down around them. Back on our Walkers and Shadow, though, this fight continues on from the outskirts like we talked about. I'm more confused as to why they're going tit for tat here. As their game and tournament life is on the line right now, and you don't really want to drag out fights like this for too long. Look at this, the marker comes out, they find Champo out of position here temporarily.
And what's crazy is Champo and Decay are just so far removed from the situation. Like, they have literally zero interest in continuing that exchange. They recognize the fact that that's just not a position they're going to be able to leverage in that circumstance. So I'd rather fall back, regroup, see if they can gauge a better direction to make an approach there at the Rebels Roost. But yeah, MDF, a lot of edge map teams taking these fights really early on. Oliver OG, you asked about him. Asian Jeff still kicking at the bottom of Rift Island currently. And Oliver OG, he can hear all the action.
Do it.
Wants his piece of the pie.
Yeah, no, I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, little as you know, there are a lot of teams up here. Yeah, you may need the brick, but is it worth it? Now you're entering into the fray here. Still, turns out to be a net positive for the time being. Continuing to invest in, and we'll see what happens. Meanwhile, right above them, ending to
builds.
a couple players. A lot going on here. This is the risk you take, though, right?
Guess this is just what happens when you have like 4 different teams duking it out over at Rift Island. But the development of this situation here at the top of Rift Island, MDF, a lot of it's really just going to depend. Asian Jeff and Oliver OG, they actually have a pretty good opportunity here if they want to try and essentially control the launch pads. Might be some teams hanging out on this Rift Island that could be looking for an easy rotate out, but Oliver OG and Asian Jeff are going to continue to move a little bit more central. Amazingly enough, the capture point also not yet been claimed.
Yeah, that's actually the bigger surprise right now. I thought it would have been claimed by Havoc above there for a second, but that fight really set them back, and they didn't even think about going for it. So well, there you have it. To all of our surprise, Agent Jeff and Oliver OG, and they're somehow miraculously walking out of here with even a better situation. More brick, clearly control of the launch pad now, and the entire cache. So GG's for them.
Last one's up, but the first to prosper, seemingly enough, there at the Rift Island. And another mild success story here for Chubbs and Bryce. So, Reboot Van clearly was a successful rescue mission. Question now, though, is how much time did that really eat into Chubbs and Bryce's strategy here? Because you obviously want to try and get ideal positioning for some of these mid-game zones, but instead, Chubbs and Bryce set so far back, having to go for that reboot van instead, so could be in some serious need for surge tag damage.
Yeah, and you could tell that I think this is definitely the case when they're pretty far removed from the zone right now, and they're willing to kind of stake out that duo that's in front of them, hoping that they likely grapple blade out first and catch some tags while they rotate. Back on over to the Rift Island area. And things are pretty quiet for the time being, so everyone here is more or less settled in a groove and in the zone. Not much for Tahi and Ceneto to get involved with here, though. I'm not sure if the play is going to be that they're just going to have to go up this island here shortly.
Whether they like it or not, they're likely going to have to get active pretty soon here, MDF, because only 78 above that damage threshold. They do have options, though, given the amount of shots being fired still at the top of Rift Island. That could be what Ceneto and Tahi are actually opting to wait for. And checking back in with Bryce and Chubbs. Encrypted Ducky, just one layer above now. Encrypted, exposed entirely. Bryce gonna instantly look to try and turn him into mincemeat, but instead it's gonna be Ducky with the follow-up backup. No, Chubbs one more time watches as Bryce gets full E-limbed. But this is still a fight that Chubbs is willing to take. Managed to secure at least 1-2 shield potions. So could get his shields back to full, but keep in mind, 2-tick zone. It's gonna chip away at both of these teams so rapidly. Chubbs knows he's got at least a med kit that he could work with here. But at the same time, losing Bryce, that was the last intention this duo had in mind.
Yeah, I just don't know how Bryce doesn't finish that right there. He had everything that he needed starting to stack in his favor. Encrypted makes a mistake, cones him in, perfectly trapped, hits the big tag. And then it's like he just forgot to follow up. I think, yeah, things just suddenly flipped upside down, and Ducky comes in with an incredible save, which I didn't see coming at all.
Might have been a pretty big save for Ducky in terms of making sure that Encrypted stays standing here. Asian Jeff, Oliver OG, though, we saw them at the top of Rift Island. We heard there was definitely plenty of action bumping in place. Havoc quickly toasted by Asian Jeff. And Asian Jeff, he's not done just yet. And a Malibuka.
Dang.
I don't think Malibuka would be moving like this now. Asian Jeff coming out on top. 2 eliminations, 8 beautiful points added to the tally. Given that they were, what, 17th heading into game number 2, that's a massive opportunity for them to siege advantage of.
It's actually insane. I'm really against them going up to the Rift Island because the risk involved, but it turned out to be the best decision, the best move for them. Set of eliminations. Now they're above the surge here. They have some room to work with. Max material, upgraded, you know, mythical loadouts, legendary loadouts. Like, they just set themselves up for what could be a huge game right here. Now they just have to stay grounded, essentially. Look at this zone. The zone's going to pull wickedly to the west right now.
Nah, these zones actually hate the players. I've never been more convinced.
This is a rough one.
The water zone, this far west pool zone, practically going to force a lot of these teams to honestly have to traverse back over the water in the first place. But yeah, definitely a vicious cycle so far today with some of these zone pools, but good crash pad, good flow barrier usage out of Tahi and Ceneto. They're gonna opt to drop to the low ground as well. Just wanna try and keep themselves as eyes off as possible from the rest of the lobby.
It's actually a great rotate. Well timed, nice and early. Let's jump in with Chubbs solo. Gets the first tag onto Hydra, gets the finish as the teammate bails on Hydra. Ruff's just like, yo, bro, I don't know what just happened, but I'm good. Where you at? And he left him in the box. Chubbs finds a good set of points here. This is all that matters, is that it's not for nothing this game, right? Like, earn what you can so that you can come in here in the last game and get that top 15. And so far, he's doing it.
The only thing Chubbs is really hurting for right now is just a little bit of white heals. If you can find even bandages at this point. Higher gonna be the initial focus, but it was just Chubbs putting some spray down. Now he's gonna offer the rotate instead. As a solo, wants to do his best to try and stay ahead of these zones, but gotta be careful because you don't want to find yourself getting picked off in the process. And with the last of his Flowberry Fizz coming out, Chubbs, it's gonna be quite the endeavor for him from this position.
This is actually a good terrain for a solo to be in right now. Works out really well. It's a nice, easy slope. Not too steep, not too crazy, but a lot of protection, a lot of cover to work around as well. So I think we're going to be able to see someone like Bryce pull pretty far right now. For Chubbs there. Dago plays in G Money, setting themselves up for success now. Little elimination set there, brings them on up to 3. Not quite rewarded with a ton of material, but still something to gain nonetheless for Macwood and Blake. They're at the far side of the zone, but they do have a grapple blade to work with. 5 Elans right now, so really turning online right now in this game, and here goes it. End up buffing themselves up for the time being and blading on out to the side here.
Actually going to be one of the first few teams in the lobby to touch down inside of this next zone, but again, Blake, Macwood, fully understanding they have a lot of ground to cover. Blizzard just doing his best magic hat, just a full-on appearance. Pulling a rabbit out of the hat, except it was Blizzard inside of Macwood and Blake's box. Nearly took out Blake in the process too, so good awareness from Macwood to back up his duo. And like I was mentioning, these two fully aware after how their last game shaped up. They've got to go big in this lobby if they want to feel a little bit more comfortable with how that final match will play out. And 6 elims, definitely a good spot to be in.
Not again. Not another team basing out this early before the zone even starts to move. Well, we saw what happened last game. I mean, this is what happens when, you know, you get to day 3, right? Lower bracket, like all the plays are coming out. Well, we'll see what happens though. Ultimately, Shadow and Walkers are, or can be considered amongst some of the more experienced players in these lobbies right now. Tahi down here by himself, 123 damage below the surge. Things are looking pretty dire here in the low ground. Chubbs barely holding on to his game as well. So we talked about it, gave it a second, and new high ground. Folks up top, Shadows down. I mean, I could have said, you know, I told you so, but you know, whatever. It's all good.
Sometimes it's just not even necessary. But only time will tell if another team chooses to try and skybase in the 8th zone.
I just don't know why. It's just so...
Just look at how far up they made it, though. They really took this to some height. And now Macwood Blake easily gonna fall back here, just completely perched at their elevated thrones right now. How long can they hold it, though, is another question entirely. Just Chubbs doing his best. Actually gonna commit with a grapple towards front side low. Not as much congestion having built up here since Chubbs got out ahead of everybody else. Might have an opportunity even to look for another elimination. He's already picked up 3. Tahi, on the other hand, just finding himself trying to do everything he can to keep things moving forward, but down to his final 3 builds. He's got to try and hang more towards the backside of these moving zones, and Tahi breaks in, trying to attempt to get into Walker's box. Tahi might be able to do it, but no, not good enough. Walker's gonna find an elimination there instead. Chubbs now trying to hold his own.
Chubbs is crazy with it. Chubbs is going crazy right now. So not only has he been solo for the majority of this game, longer than he's been a duo, but he is continuing to find eliminations, and he just singled out another solo behind him. I hope he turns focus here and picks that one up too. He's now inside the top 10 and has 4 eliminations. This could be the defining top 15 run for him right now. He just watched a player walk by him. It's Walker's there. He's got options. He's got so many to work with. Here it is on the heels. He's got the grapple blade. One more to get into the safe zone, but no, doesn't quite find it in there. 2 HP, still alive here, still on the hunt now. What a run.
Got scared for a moment, but he was gonna put a toe just too long into the zone. Chubbs now crawling through this low ground. All these wood builds surrounding him. Chubbs, he's got to come up big with his next shot. That's if he can make sure to even stay keeping from these zone ticks. And
Oh
again,
no, the hesitation. But it's almost the top 5 for him. Still good nonetheless. Oliver OG, Asian Jeff in another big end game. We talked about it. We said that's all that they needed. The little platform that give them the boost, give them the momentum, and then make that end game, and top 15 is yours. And it looks like they have just all but done it. 72 points earned this game. They already came into this with about 20 or so points in top 17. So this is the run for Asian Jeff and Oliver OGs as they're setting themselves up for the FNCS Grand Finals appearance. Who would have thought it? Asian Jeff having quite the year already. He continues to rage on here. Oliver OG comes in the nick of time with the heels there, and Blake finds his elimination there to finish things up. Taco, I mean, this is looking great for a lot of the favorites right now.
it all depends though, because Macwood, you have to notice, he doesn't have any white heals. Oliver OG actually had 2 med kits in hand. So now it's all gonna fall down to whether or not Oliver OG can manage to secure another handful of heals. Also has to be careful he doesn't succumb to that storm sickness. But Oliver OG, you can see his last med kit, it just ran out. He's scurrying through every single one of these builds, but he can't find Ceneto. Ceneto clutching up in a heal off, just fully content to stay back while the zone does the rest of the work for him.
Yeah, definitely. But Oliver OG, Asian Jeff, there's still plenty of room for them to celebrate. An 80-point game for them is massive. It's surely going to set themselves up for top 15. Well played, GGs. And also shout out to King Ceneto as well, who all of a sudden comes out with a big game. This victory royale here too, all but solidifying Veer and Ceneto's ticket to the finals. But they will still need, again, you got to get around that 95, 100 plus points if you want to be like comfortably set up inside the top 15 to eliminate the pressure. And they're just one big step closer to doing that now.
Yeah, not to mention, we definitely saw a really big turnaround as well. Honorable shout outs there for Blake and Macwood. They really came up massive here. Getting that top 5 finish is definitely going to do some very nice things, I think, to their points. But again, we could see how the lobby and how the leaderboard is shaping up by getting it back over to the analysts. So Zeke, what do you guys got for us?